We need to go ahead and get started. We apologize for the delay upstairs, and we're glad to have all of you here. We do have one of our senators, Emmanuel Jones, on the committee, who his older brother had passed away last night, so he won't be here, and we're going to remember him in our prayers. And with that, I'll ask my counterpart, the chairman in the House, Chairman Battles, to lead us in that invocation.
Let's pray. Father, we come to you today to give you thanks for who you are. We thank you because you're far wiser than we are, and we know that your grace is always sufficient. And in the loss of this loved one, we know that there is pain, but yet through all of that, you say you go with us even all the way to the end of the world. So we know you're there with them. Bless our time together. May your will be done, and we'll give you the honor and praise and glory for it. For it is in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you.
All right, we've got some Senate bills for the Senate to hear and some House bills as well. And we could start and make sure, I know a lot of you don't know the Senate and the House members, so if we wanted to quickly, maybe on the bottom row first, introduce yourselves, then... and I'm sure I won't get the right mic there, but we'll try. 9, 10.
10.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm State Representative Debbie Buckner. I represent Harris, Talbot, Meriwether, and Muskogee counties.
Representative David Wilkerson. I represent parts of Cobb County.
Representative Tommy Benton. I represent part of Jackson County.
You have me. State Representative Ernest Coach William, retired teacher, 35 years of service. I represent DeKalb County, House District 87.
Okay, Senator Redd, if you want.
Senator.
Is it? There it is.
Senator Redd, represent Cobb County. Thank you all for being here.
Good morning. Hunter Hill, represent portions of Cobb and Fulton County.
Tyler Harper. I have the privilege of representing the 7th Senate District down in South Georgia, which encompasses 10 counties, so great to be with you.
Senator Ellis Black. I'm from the 8th down in South Georgia, and I represent all of South Georgia that Tyler doesn't have.
Okay. Chairman, you want to?
Oh, excuse me. Paul Battles, Chair of the House Committee, and I'm from District 15.
Chuck Hufstetler, Chair of the Senate Retirement Committee. I'm from Rome, Georgia, and represent Bartow, Floyd, Gordon, and Chattooga counties.
He's my senator. Oh.
Brooks?
I thought I had you on.
Representative Brooks Coleman. I'm from Gwinnett County. I represent Duluth, Swanee, Sugar Hill, and parts of Beaufort. I've been on this committee now. This is my 23rd year. So one day I'm going to retire, maybe.
Apologize, your mic's not working there, but we may have to swap one.
Howard Maxwell, Paulton County.
Festival and Macon County. Glad to see all of you this morning.
All right, and I believe we have a quorum out of both bodies here today. Tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. We've got quite a few bills to cover today. We've got some Senate bills and some House bills. I'll hear the Senate bills. Chairman Battles will then hear the House bills. Each group would then vote on their bills if they want to move them forward or not. I know we've got a big crowd here. I think probably more people are here for Senate Bill 152 than anything else. So I put it first in trying to be considerate of your time that you are away from here. So with that, we'll move on into, and I do want to say on discussion, I do want to have discussion, but also in consideration of everybody's time, we may not have the same comments made over and over again. You know, we'll kind of see how it goes and see if we have to limit it. We do want to let people participate, but we do have other bills we have to hear too. So we'll play that one by ear. And with that, will the author of Senate Bill 152, if you want to come down and make the presentation, or you can make it from there, whatever your preference is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may have left you to it from here.
23, you're what, 25?
25.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all of you that are here. I know there's a lot of people that are concerned and very interested in this bill, and I have great respect for that. You know, I think everybody on this panel is well united in our respect for and desire to compensate our teachers well and recognize what they do for our great state. Teachers get into teaching for a number of reasons, and I wanted to start with this sort of conversation about why I'm even doing this, because I haven't had a chance to talk to many of you either by email or phone. But number one is my entire intent in this bill is to ensure that we can recruit and retain the best teachers for our state. So really, while Senate Bill 152 is almost entirely focused on the retirement system, I do see it as a singular leg of a three-legged stool, which is salary, retirement, and benefits. And then another aspect of that is opportunities, and I was going to talk about that as well. But Senate Bill 152 will affect only new teachers. So starting in starting in 2017, new teachers that come into the system would be offered a 401k plan. The whole genesis and the idea for this is our current system really incentivizes longevity of service and pays people a wonderful retirement benefit after they've served in our system for 20 years and 30 years and onward. And that's a very good thing. And I have no intent to change that for the people that are already in the system. So I'm going to say that again. The people that are already teaching, they're in their first year of teaching, and of course up to people that are very old at this point and still collecting their retirement. There would be no change for them at all. So for the next, call it, if somebody's 23 and just getting started, 70 years, the current plan that's in place would not be changed according to this bill. This would be offering a 401k for new teachers starting in 2017. But the key point here that I'm trying or I need to start trying to make is that we wouldn't want to go to this change in our system unless we were to change total compensation for teachers. In other words, we need to pay teachers more today for the work that they're and value that they're providing to our students today. And so this bill needs to be considered in light of teacher compensation reform. And not incentivizing people to leave the classroom to go to the administration. We want to pay teachers well for the value that they're providing today and give them a great benefit when they retire, but then also remove the state from the obligation for those teachers once they leave. And that would be, in 37 years or so. So those are the key points of what I am trying to accomplish in this bill, and I think everybody on this committee understands our role in trying to not only provide fiscal soundness to the state, but also to compensate and reward our great teachers in this state, and that's the vein in which I've put the bill forward. And again, today we were just looking at moving it forward for a study to see what the economic benefit what the consequences are, if you will, to the retirement system. So, because we can't move forward on a bill like this unless we know the impact it's going to have, and so that was why I put it forward. Let's just see what this is going to do, and we may find that it is detrimental. I'm open to that. I'm open to a conversation of finding that now is not the right time and this is not the right vehicle. But I think it's difficult to make that decision without having a fiscal study. An actuarial study on this bill. So, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence of time, and I know that we have a tight schedule, so I'll end it there. I just wanted to at least start off with letting people know why we're looking at this. And one last thing, I want to applaud the governor because he is looking at this as well. He's put together a team to look at teacher compensation reform. Many of you may be on that committee. I'm not on the committee, so I look forward to that conversation and everybody weighing in on what you think is best for the future of our teachers and how we can have the best education system in the country. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. With that, I guess first we'll see if committee members have questions that they would like to ask on the bill. One question I've got, I know this has been done with since I didn't see any other questions, been done with the ERS system, and I know you talk about additional compensation. I don't see anything in the bill that addresses additional compensation. I think the argument would be that in 2009, I believe it was, before you and I were here, and this happened similarly, that the additional compensation didn't happen. So that's
right. That's
always, a concern. Is there any mechanism to do that?
It's a great point, Mr. Chairman. For those in the audience as well, I mean, we have germaneness challenges in legislation, and this is a retirement bill. It needs to be entirely focused on retirement. Retirement is in statute, so in order to effectively change retirement, it has to be. You have to do so with a bill. Salary of teachers is not in statute. It's so, as a legislator, we need to have that larger conversation, but in terms of putting that in this bill, there was no means by which to do it. But you raise a great point. We did do that. We changed the employees' retirement system to a 401k, hit a downturn, and did not do what we said we would do. Well, that's on us, and we need to fix that. And I've heard people say, well, why don't you wait then on this and wait until we have that full conversation about the comprehensive compensation reform before we move forward with this. And that is my intent. And so my point is we're not voting to pass this today. We will, if we move this forward for an actuarial, we'll have those facts on the retirement piece while the governor's working toward coming up with the salary and compensation reform, and then this will be ready at the appropriate time if the committee's willing to move it forward. But again, it's not about this is about preparing and leaning forward. This is not about forcing something down someone's throat, absent of those other more equally important conversations. I'm not supportive of this bill. Okay, this bill that I put forward, I'm not supportive of it if we don't do compensation reform. So compensation reform is got to happen before I would support passing this bill in the session next year. Does that make sense?
Understand your comments. Okay,
well,
let's keep the comments down, please.
Entitled to your opinion, but
we in transferring from the room, and first of all, let me welcome Senator Crane here and Representative Weldon. I believe we're the only two that have joined us. But in transferring from the other room, we didn't get the sign-up sheet out to everyone. So my question would be, how many people here are wanting to speak on behalf of this? We really are going to need to limit it. We've got, 1, 2, 6 hands, okay. Okay, yeah, if maybe y'all could work it out. And let's try to limit it to a couple of minutes each, because we do have a ton of bills, and with knowing the direction this is going. So if you want to come up first here. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Justice Campbell, President of the Association of Educators. Karen Solheim, who is the president of the retired, and I will defer to her. I think we're all in agreement that this bill is not needed, and so we're going to move this.
Let's see, is that one?
Good morning.
Is that better? Sorry.
I am Karen Solheim. I'm president of the Georgia Association of Retired Educators, and I represent about 3,000 members throughout the state of Georgia. But more importantly, I was a high school English teacher for 29 years, and it sounds like a prison sentence. It wasn't. I did 20 years over in Jackson County at Jefferson High School, and then finished up my career at Oconee County High School. And when I hear that this bill doesn't impact me, I believe it does. Even as a retiree of 3 years, what impacts one in our profession of education impacts everyone. And so I'm also thinking that if we're just trying to do something for the new hires, then what does that mean in terms of the system as it is? If the system as it is working, why would we try and impact or present something that will change something that is currently doing just fine? I'm hopeful that you received a letter that was drafted by the Georgia Association of Educators Retired Executive Committee, and I just want to take a moment to, and I'll be brief on that and read that to you. Whereas Georgia Teacher Retirement System, TRS, is one of the most financially sound systems in the United States, and whereas educators dedicate their careers to teaching and investing in the lives of Georgia's 1.6 million children in public education, and whereas the salaries in the profession of education are below those of other professions and pay raises are rare, and whereas TRS currently provides an adequate retirement for almost 110,100 retired members, and is on track to provide an adequate retirement for its over 219,000 active members through its current defined benefit plan. And whereas the entire state benefits from attracting the best and the brightest to public education in Georgia, and whereas a strong teachers' retirement system is essential to the recruitment and retention of quality candidates for teaching positions in Georgia, therefore, be it resolved that the Executive Committee of the Georgia Association of Educators Retired, a subsidiary organization of the Georgia Association of Educators, unanimously opposes any changes to TRS, especially to include a defined contribution component. And be it further resolved that this organization enthusiastically requests that members of both the House and the Senate retirement committees take no further action to weaken the current TRS system and by implication the public education system in Georgia. And in conclusion, we did have a petition online to this effect through GAE, and I'd like to just present the committee with over 8,000 signatures that echo this sentiment. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right, thank you for your comments. We've heard from the Georgia Association of Educators retired members. Are there any other groups that wanted to speak on behalf? Okay, who do you represent?
Yes, I'm Margaret Ciccarelli, representing PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, about 86,000 educators statewide, including a significant number of student educators who are rising educators into the profession. We do oppose the legislation, but appreciate the conversation here today. And the reason that we oppose it is because we believe it will jeopardize our recruitment efforts of the best and brightest educators to the profession, and that it will destabilize the existing TRS plan for existing members. I would also note that we appreciate the conversation and tie-in to the work of the Education Reform Commission that is ongoing this summer. We've, of course, been closely monitoring that, as well as the committee of the ERC on teacher recruitment, retention, and compensation. I would say that the organizers of the ERC, including its chair, Dr. Knapp, have explicitly said that the Commission's work is not centered around the cost of funding education, but about distributing, about how to redistribute education dollars. So, we worry that there will not be any additional salary increases for educators based on the existing and ongoing conversation coming out of the Commission. And so while we appreciate the conversation about how to recruit educators to the profession, we're very worried that combined with the work of the ERC, that taking action to send this to actuary will again jeopardize the work that we all share in trying to prepare our students for the 21st century. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. we've heard now from Paige, GA retired. Chuck, if you would like to go ahead.
Be very, very quick, because I'm willing to let the process work. I've been around here long enough, and I respect both the opinion and the views. Speaking here on behalf of the Georgia Education Coalition, which is 9 of the larger school systems, and the Cobb County school system, I just wanted to make sure that we were on the record. They do have great angst, but there's going to be plenty and ample time to either find ways to object to or support as this process moves forward. But I just wanted to put that on the record and thank all of you for what you do.
All right, thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bill Sloan. I'm the Executive Director of the Georgia Retired Educator Association. We have 25,000 members spread in every county in this state. Excuse me. We are extremely opposed to changing the TRS system. Let me also say I'm a member of the TRS Board of Trustees. Governor Deal appointed me 3 years ago to serve on that board. It runs great. It does a great job. I travel all over this country in my 2 positions, and we are recognized as one of the top 5 TRS systems in the nation. And why do you mess with something that's great? We really have a great reputation in Georgia for our teacher retirement system. And if you change it, it's going to go down the drain, folks. I'm just going to tell you that what's being proposed is terrible for beginning teachers. I have a young granddaughter who is 16, makes straight A's. She wants to be a teacher, and I will encourage her not to be a teacher if this passes, because this is not a good way to do retirement.
All right.
So I'm encouraging you to please vote no on sending this on. And you know, there's 200-something thousand active teachers. There's 109,000 retired teachers in this state. That's over 1/3 of a million people. You throw in their spouses and their kids. There's a great storm coming, folks, if this goes on. And you've been hearing, you've been getting emails, and we've barely touched the surface. Only our presidents know about it, really, that I've sent out. So if the great storm is out there, and I just encourage you to say no and deal with this somewhere down the road and not right now, because it's just not the time, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. And I believe our last speaker here.
No, I wanted to speak.
Okay. Well,
I'm a retired teacher. I started 45 years ago. I'm 72 years old, and I'm thinking, how much longer am I going to have to drive downtown and advocate for myself? What will happen to me when I'm 85? All right. Teachers are pretty aware people, as you know. Many of you are, Mr. Coleman, former teachers. And we all know this has to do with an ideological force in our nation, private, free market versus public, bottom line. I am a strong supporter of public education, as was Thomas Jefferson. And I want to let you know now just a few details about my life.
Okay, and we're going to have to really move
No,
quickly.
I have, but I have spoken very little.
I know,
I just have 3 points to make, please. The teacher retirement system takes care of about 83% of what's given to us monthly. Used to be 95 before the recession. We pay for our own retirement. We don't enjoy it as a gift from others, okay? Now, as you do what you're planning to do in the future, the state will have to absorb more to give me my current pension because the TRS monies will be depleted. All right, if you do this, which I strongly hope you do not, please add a part that says the state will take over when the TRS funds become depleted. Do you hear me? Do you know what I'm saying? I don't want to be 95 years old and think I have to take my wheelchair down here and beg you for money. Now, cost of living raise, please put that in. Last thing for me. Here's my situation. I'm a widow. My husband died at age 68 years ago, working 42 years straight up. He had his own business at one time, exhausted. We had one child. I used my Social Security VALIC then with DeKalb County to put her in an excellent private university, and she's flourishing because I made that choice. I do have nothing from my husband because I made more than he did when he had to go back to retail. I am totally dependent, my mother and father are long dead, on this teacher retirement system. I don't want games being played because talk is cheap, but we know what's really going on here. And philosophically, I'm totally against destroying public education. But aside from that, weigh the actual points that I've made. Thank you.
All right.
1 minute?
Yeah, 1 minute.
I appreciate it. I'm Rod Chatham, Fulton County retired educator. Hunter Hill, good to see you. Marianne Smith, our legislative liaison, sent me down to speak quickly about this, and I heard one thing in your speech that I wanted to ask you about. When I read through the bill, I noticed that our COLA becomes in jeopardy with the movement of this bill. And could you discuss that, or has it been pulled out as in jeopardy? And once again, all the Fulton County retired educators agree with what you've already heard. We would love to see you just shelf this bill for right now and let the governor's study do the work.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, and last speaker here.
Could he answer my COLA question?
We're not, this is your public comment. It's not a question and answer
Well, then
session.
that's my comment. The COLA is in
Okay.
jeopardy because of the movement of this
Right.
bill. Don't move it.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Michael O'Sullivan with Students First Georgia. I think one of the things that we look at when we look at pension plans is a fairness issue for teachers. And we look at the current Georgia plan and see one that it would be nice to see one that's more portable. It would be nice to see a pension plan that allows teachers that know they will never vest to be able to still receive some sort of retirement benefit. And there are many, great teachers that know going in that they aren't going to spend a lifetime in the classroom, and we need to be able to have a plan that allows them to retain some sort of benefit. As far as this particular legislation goes, I would like to commend the author for getting this conversation started. It would be nice to see how the actuarial study does end up and see what the numbers do bear, if it's something that is worth considering at another time that could be worth a discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Weldon, did you want to make a comment? Okay. Then if Senator Hill, if you'd like to close the discussion.
Am I last? I'd like to close the debate, if that's okay.
That's what we're doing, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate everyone's comments, and I don't remember your name, but the nice lady that is collecting retirement right now. I just want to reiterate my point that it is the state's obligation, as it currently is, to ensure that the TRS is fiscally sound. That's why we put money in it every year to help with employee contributions and employer contributions. This bill would not affect our obligation in that vein. As for the COLA issue that the gentleman brought up from Fulton County, that was addressing the future system that would be created under this bill. So this bill would not put in jeopardy COLA adjustments either. But the other point I wanted to make is that this doesn't, I was hoping that this would stir a debate and bring in good ideas, and if there was amendments needed to the bill, then we could have those as well. But again, I think that it's prudent to at least understand the fiscal impact of this, where nobody's going to move forward on anything rashly. I know that there's, on both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, opposition to this bill, and I know that there's support to this bill. So it's just worthy of a conversation, and you can't have a full and intelligent conversation without having the facts. And so today we're asking to approve getting all the facts and understanding the fiscal impact to this most important retirement system. So I hope people don't think I don't think this is important. This is vitally important for the security and for the security of the individuals that have given their life as educators, and then also for the obligation of the state to fund what we said we would fund. So that's the vein in which I bring this legislation, and I hope the committee will consider it. Thank you.
Okay, with that, the debate's closed, and if anyone would like to make a motion, they can. Actually, you don't. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's Alan Peake, but you're on the wrong committee. Okay. Okay. All right. We've got a motion, and I guess, is that okay for ex officio? All right. Is there a second? All right. Well, the motion will die for a lack of a second at this point then. We can do all the same, or we can do every other one. What do you want to do? Okay, we'll go ahead. Okay. All right. You're welcome to leave at this point if you would like to. I think that was the majority of it. We've got some stuff that maybe is a little bit less fun coming up, but we thank you for coming. I do apologize if anybody feels like I cut them off, but I do have to respect other people's time that have taken out for other bills here. With that, we'll move on to Senator McCoon, if you'd like to come up. You've got a couple of bills, and I know they seem fairly similar, so if you would like to address that, one or both of them, however your preference would be. I guess we'll start with Senate Bill 149. Okay. I thought the mic's on, but...
Okay. Is that...
Yeah, just got to get a little closer.
Okay. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Senate Bill 149, and when I finish describing it, I'll explain the one difference between it and Senate Bill 150, is designed to provide an incentive to veterans to participate in state employment. What it would do, if you look at Section 1, lines 12 through 14, it would make any member of the state retirement system with at least 2 years of membership service to be eligible to apply for service credit to be awarded year for year for their active military service, so long as that military service occurred on or after January 1st, 1990. And what it would require is for that service member who was also a state employee at the close of that 2-year period to buy in that time. They would have to make a lump sum payment, which would be equal to 3% of his or her annual military base pay rate in order to purchase each year of service credit sought. The bill limits the amount of creditable service that could be bought to 5 years. It does not allow creditable service under this bill if the member involved was dishonorably discharged. And that's essentially what the bill does. I believe that it will provide a powerful incentive to recruit talented men and women who've served in our armed services to seek employment with the state of Georgia. I think it frankly makes us more competitive to retain a veteran population in our state than other states that offer other incentives. For example, in Alabama, there are pretty generous tax incentives offered to veterans. Being in a border community that has a large veteran population, I'm pretty sensitive to that. And I feel like this would be a great incentive from that perspective. I also think it would be helpful from a base realignment and closure process when we're looked at again, when that process comes up again out of Washington. I think this is the sort of thing that we would really like to be able to highlight to show that we're being welcoming to veterans, because of course when an active duty member exits service, they go through an exit interview where they're made aware of all the potential opportunities for them in the state, and this would, I think, be something that would be featured in that process and result in a benefit for the state as well as a benefit for veterans population. The only difference between Senate Bill 149 and Senate Bill 150 is that Senate Bill 150 extends the creditable service that could be purchased to 10 years, whereas Senate Bill 149 limits it to 5 years. I really think the big question at this point is what the cost would be, which is why we're here today, to try to, hopefully with the wisdom of the committee, to move this forward and get the fiscal study done so that we can have all the facts before us as we continue to consider this legislation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to answer any questions. And if you ask me a question I can't answer, I'll probably defer it to Mr. McKean, who's spent a lot of time working on it with me.
Okay. Senator Rett? Or is that 26? There we go.
Yes, sir. Does this apply to current members, let's say, of the armed forces who are educators, or is this just pertaining to future people coming into the program from the military?
This would go into effect.
Well, the reason I ask is because, I'm an educator and I'm also in the United States Air Force Reserve, and for obvious reasons.
If I may, Senator, this in fact would not impact the teacher retirement system because it's only the state employee retirement system. Additionally, it requires that it be active military service, so it wouldn't affect reservists. But it would impact any current member of active duty military.
Well, the reason I ask that also is because now more increasingly you see members of the Reserve and Guard called to active duty. As a matter of fact, my squadron is coming back this month.
Senator Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator McCoon, a couple questions I guess would apply to both of them, but I notice that as far as why have you decided that the creditable service payment is just based on their pay at 3% of that base pay versus doing an actuarial impact, where when we see other members come into any of our retirement systems, they're usually asked to pay whatever the actuarial impact of bringing that member into the retirement system would be?
Because on the federal level, Senator, it's 3%, and we mirrored this with the federal program. That was the thought behind it, sir.
Will the study reflect what those actuarial impacts will be versus that 3% pay-in?
Yeah, I believe that it would, and I think that based on that kind of feedback, I would be open to making changes if we determine that that's going to be something that is not fiscally prudent.
Okay. One other question. It also states here on lines 28 through 31 that this creditable service cannot be used in conjunction with anything else used in determination of eligibility. Isn't any active service technically eligibility for retirement? And doesn't that essentially exclude everybody that's actively engaged in the military?
The thought was this, Senator, that we didn't want people double dipping. If you've done 20 years as in the military, we don't want you to burden the employee retirement system, by vesting in 10 years and leaving. This was really to encourage people to stay longer once they gain employment. That's also something that's used in federal programs as well.
Okay, I'm not sure that answered that question. I mean, the language there, I think, would specifically exclude anybody that's, unless I'm misunderstanding, that active military are not at some level being determining eligibility by their service.
I think that we may need to wordsmith it a little bit better, but I think that the key term is the eligibility for benefits from any other state or federal retirement program. So if they've gotten to a point where they would have vested in a state or federal retirement system, this incentive would not be available to them. That's the aim of that language.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, and then Vice Chairman Black.
Sir, Crane answered my question.
Okay. All right. knowing the cost of these studies, you know, and I actually don't know them, but I know that they're significant. It depends on each one. Is there one or the other you would?
If the committee were going to just choose one, I would probably suggest Senate Bill 149.
Okay. Well, that's the one that we're hearing right now. So with that, is there any other discussion from any committee members? So if not, the floor is open for a motion if anyone would like to make one. Senator Rhett, you make a motion to approve the actuarial study going forward? Okay. Is there a second? Okay, we've got a second on it. And any further discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and vote by raising your hands. All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay. Senate Bill 149 passes unanimously. And with that, I won't hear Senate Bill 150 if you're good with that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. I appreciate it.
Okay. We have our distinguished chairman of appropriations here, if you would like to present. Sure. Wayne, if you want to come up as well.
Mr. President, members of the committee, thank you for your hearing Senate Bill 243 this morning. Just a quick background. This came up in conversation with Wayne about retention and the work of the Legislative Council's office. And those of you who've been here a long time know, and those of you who haven't been, you'll see it as time goes by. Our ability and the quality of the work we do has a lot to do with the results and the work we get out of the Legislative Council office. We basically heavily depend on them, as you know. You may not know that we actually gave them an extra pay increase this year in the budget in cooperation with Chairman England, and we're trying our best to retain legislative counsels with experience. There's really no substitute for experience in writing legislation. It's not something you do in the lawyer world very much, so when you get somebody who stays a while, you want to try to keep them. That is the background for this bill, and that we're proposing a window of opportunity for legislative council members who would choose to become members of the judicial retirement system as opposed to the ERS retirement system, which we think will be a long-term benefit that will help us keep legislative council members. That is essentially what the bill does. It has a very limited window in it, as you can see, that ends next year. So if I've made any mistake in explaining it, Wayne, you can certainly take over and explain it. But if it's all right with the chairman, I'd like for Wayne to comment on that.
Certainly. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I want to start by thanking Chairman Hill and President Pro Tem Schaefer for introducing this legislation. If I may, I'll give just a little bit more background to it. Number one, I want to make clear that I have nothing personal to gain from this. I've been a member of JRS since 1998. I come here to you today to explain the bill on behalf of my office in my capacity as director of that office. In 1998, the JRS was created. At that time, attorneys and legislative counsel were made eligible for participation in the system. JRS was designed, many judges typically come in mid-career to their position from private practice. Same has been true historically in the Office of Legislative Counsel. We've tried to attract mid-career attorneys, those with experience, to come to the office and gain experience in what we do and let them bring something to the table before they get here. In 2005, that opportunity was closed by legislation. So new hires were no longer eligible. From a director's perspective, the option to participate in JRS can be a valuable tool from management side for attracting and retaining experienced people. If I may give a personal example, I was 41 when I joined the office. I know another current attorney who was in the same boat. He's even older than I am. I think he was close to 50 when he joined our office. It makes it difficult for someone coming in mid-career to stay very long because of 30 years in ERS. The heart of our office are those attorneys with at least 10 years of experience. It takes at least 4 years for us to start getting return on investment from an attorney who comes to our office. We obviously want to use whatever tools we can to attract and retain valuable staff. Allowing attorneys to opt for the JRS would be a win-win situation for us in 2 respects. One, attracting and retaining valuable staff. Number 2, it would actually result in a cost reduction for this office, in that the employer share for JRS is much less than it is for ERS or GSEPs. For fiscal year 2016, the employer cost for ERS is 24.72%. For GSEPs, it's 21.69%. For JRS, the employer share is only 12.19%. For every attorney that would opt to participate in JRS, it's that much of a cost reduction for our office as an employer. Not every current attorney may choose to join. Every individual circumstance is different depending on their current age and their years of experience. But I do know that some are interested. We are a small organization. There are only 7 attorneys at most right now, current attorneys, who might consider this. I would expect, I'm not the actuary, and it obviously would depend upon that study being done, but I would expect if this bill did go forward, the cost of the system for current transfers would not be large because of the limited number of people. I will point out one thing. The window for, under this legislation is prepared, the window for current employees to choose to switch would expire December 1 of 2016. It would, however, remain open for new hires as well, going from that point forward, so as to be able to attract experienced attorneys going forward. With that, that's my explanation for the committee. If there are any questions, I will attempt to answer them.
Okay. Are there any questions of the committee? If there's not any questions, oh, wait a minute. We do have a question over here. Senator Crane.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kind of along the same lines.
Sure.
Is the actuarial study going to reflect the what the actuarial impact of this transition would be, and would we expect that get funded by the member if they make such an election? Is that, or are we just the state going to foot that part of the bill?
For obviously going forward for new hires, that would not be an actuarial cost.
But for the 7 potential?
For the 7 potential, as the bill is written right now, it'd be a 1-for-1 credit for their service in ERS.
So if there was an actuarial impact that was negative, I mean, that would need to fund to up that to maintain that actuarial projection under JRS, the state would just be obligated to make that.
That's correct. For any of those 7 who chose to make the option to switch.
Were any of these 7, are they new hires since the last window of opportunity?
Since 2005, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Make one additional statement that there are some of those 2005 who missed that window by 4 or 5 months, and they were older attorneys.
Any other questions from committee members or any House members that had any points to consider? If not, then we can entertain for a motion right now. Okay, we've got a motion by Vice Chairman Black and a second by Senator Crane. All those in favor, raise your hand. The motion passed unanimously. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the committee. Thank you, Senator Hill.
One more bill on the Senate side, and we appreciate the House members' indulgences, and we'll try to reciprocate. Another hill. We've got plenty of hills here today, so It's only one Huffstetler. Just doesn't seem fair, but you know.
Name changes are acceptable.
Yeah. Senate Bill 246. Senator Judson Hill is here to speak on its behalf.
Good to see everybody again after, I guess, a month away. Thanks for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 246 before you. Just a quick background. This effort in Georgia started, and I'll tell you what this effort is, but this effort in Georgia started in 2007. We were the first to introduce this type of legislation. What does it do? It prevents our pension funds from investing in certain countries that are declared by the United States government as states of terrorism, such as Iran, Syria, North Korea. We were not the first state to actually pass the legislation. We passed it in 2009 after making some changes to the legislation. And the reason we're sitting here today with Senate Bill 246 is because in the legislation that actually passed a number of years ago, we put a sunset clause because we wanted to make sure that this was working, and it was working appropriately. Since that time, 20 other states have also passed similar legislation. The vast majority, maybe every single one of those, but Georgia did not have a sunset provision, so they continue to have these restrictions on their pension funds. And so what Senate Bill 246 does, it protects our state pension funds and helps save the lives of Georgians who serve in the armed forces by restricting the investments of our pension funds into companies that invest in these countries in certain sectors like the petroleum industry and the energy sector and those sorts. The legislation is found to be fiscally responsible. I think it's economically wise, and it's also the morally right thing to do. So once again, Senate Bill 246 just simply continues existing law in the state of Georgia. We're here today because of the sunset provision. It sunsets this year, 2015, and the bill would prohibit the state employee and teacher retirement plans from investing in foreign publicly traded companies that operate in these four countries. As legislators, I think it's good. We should be good and wise stewards of our pension funds. We chose to do that, those of us that were here back over 5 years ago, about unanimously supported the legislation. And I can speak more in detail to the details. I've actually got statistical reports and Morningstar reports and so forth. If y'all are looking to see that, I can hand out here. But why are we even interested in this? Moreover, we need to be protecting, I believe, the pension funds of our those people that have served our state so well. And if investments are going into these countries, yes, they're state sponsors of terrorism, but moreover, they're risky investments. If you've got an investment in a company that has extreme risk and is determined to be so by the United States government, by the Securities and Exchange Commission, which they have, by Morningstar and other national and international public investment companies, then you as an investment advisor have a duty and responsibility, a fiduciary duty, to advise your client the risk of those investments. These types of countries are in that category and have been determined by the United States government, by the State Department, and by the Securities and Exchange Commission to be countries that have high risk. They have risk of your investments being nationalized, taken over, and that has been done in a number of instances, which I can answer those questions if you so choose. I can also give you detailed information, which you probably aren't excited to hear today because I'm sitting between you and lunch, of Iran and Syria and the other countries, North Korea, that are mentioned in this legislation. And with that, I'll pause to take any questions if you so choose. And once again, we're just trying to continue current Georgia law.
All right. I believe Senator Harper, Senator Black, you had the question. Go ahead.
I got a little question here. Can you, or do you have the info, and I know this is all handled nationally, but the delisting companies is on this list of terrorist companies, and the process involved in that. And I'm looking at particularly the changes that's occurring in our relationship with Cuba, which Cuba is in this. We're interested in your comments on that.
Cuba, that's a good question. And the legislation specifically states on line 283, and it starts with an earlier line, but if a country is taken off the list of state sponsors of terrorism, then that country and investments in that country would automatically be revoked. That measure, as it relates to this bill, would be revoked, and that restriction would be revoked. But right now, Cuba is still on the list, even though the executive branch has chosen to open up certain trade relations. So I defer to the United States government as a whole. I defer to the United States Department of State and the Securities and Exchange Commission, and this bill does so specifically in the language of the legislation. But if any country were to be taken off that list as a state-sponsored, a scrutinized country, then they would not be subject to the restrictions.
And do you have any information as why North Korea is not on that list?
Why it is? It is on the list.
It is?
Yes, sir.
I missed it then, I'm sorry.
Yeah. North Korea is definitely on the list. It's a sponsor of terrorism. It sells nuclear weapons and others to foreign countries that don't have the United States of America's best interest in mind.
Do you have a line number just to
which for
North Korea? Is it actually in the bill, or?
Yeah, let me show you here. Actually, I thought it was to be in the bill. Line 151 has Iran, Syria, Cuba, and the Republic of Sudan. The reason those countries were listed because of the way the United States government. But I defer to the committee to include it. It was included in prior legislation.
All right.
It was what the initial companies or countries that were first listed back in 2007 and 8 were Iran, Syria, North Korea, and Sudan. And once again, the list is an ongoing, kind of a fluid list. It's frankly determined by the Securities and Exchange Commission and the State Department.
Okay. Next in order, I believe Representative Maxwell, did you have a comment, question?
Yes, sir, if you don't mind. Am I eligible to ask a question?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Senator. I'm somewhat confused. I noticed you've got about starting on page 4, I think, and we've added 5 or 6 pages here. But if we're extending a sunset provision on an existing bill, I don't see anywhere in here where we've changed it. It looks like we're just rewriting another bill. I don't see anything here that's striking a sunset provision and just changing the date.
You're absolutely true. We're not striking the sunset provision. The bill will sunset this year, and from what I understand, we wouldn't pass legislation until next year. So I felt, and the Legislative Council suggested that we provide some background information because, frankly, 2/3, 3/4 of the legislature wasn't even sitting at the time the first legislation was passed, and the international community and life has changed, and we wanted to upgrade that as it relates to the State Department, Securities Exchange Commission, and sponsors of terrorism.
All right, it's just a little confusing to me.
What I'm hearing you say is, why don't we just lift the sunset and make the bill move forward? And I would, because we have now this process in place that we did not have back in 2007 and 8 and 9, perhaps, a process where a retirement bill carries over and has this hearing that we're having today. We didn't have that before. It was created because of some other issues, from what I've been advised. This legislation sunsets this year, and so you can't continue. Anyway, we chose to draft it this way.
Okay, so you just drafted another bill instead of removing the sunset or changing the date. All right, thank you much.
I defer to the committee on that, but we drafted a new bill to update it, frankly.
All right. And Senator Hunter Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Hill, for bringing this. Mine was the same issue that Senator Black brought up. And, you're listing countries that may be removed, and then we don't have countries included that we want on there. So I'm offering this to you in a way to help your bill, and let me know if you think it does help. But on line 151, we can change that to say prescribed country means, and then any country that's listed under SEC. And so we're not naming countries individually, thereby leaving some out or adding ones that don't need to be there. Do you think that helps, or do you like having these names in there to the detriment of including some we should be including?
I like the way you're going on this. My pause is thinking of historical background, because it took 3 years to pass it because of these types of questions years ago.
Okay.
We were the first state in America to actually introduce the legislation. I would defer to your judgment, to anybody's judgment here, of what countries to add, frankly, because the more broad we are, the better impact for the retirees. If we remove risky investments from that category of list that they can invest in, and oh, by the way, there's some other benefits related to sanctions and such. I would support, as I sit here, the Republic of North Korea. To open up the list could potentially make it difficult for the ERS board to continue to monitor that as an ongoing monitoring through the years. But I would defer to the judgment of the committee fully. And I like the way you're going with your question. I just remember the discussions before. Some people wanted to limit that number of countries, and some wanted to expand. And
well, my concern would be we at the state are not having our hands in those determinations in terms of foreign policy and who's an enemy of the United States and who isn't. We have opinions, but there's people that we could defer to more responsibly, I feel like, and so that's why I brought the issue up.
May I ask a question? Because I'm trying to understand the process.
Sure.
I'm not supposed to be asking questions, but I appreciate the indulgence. Because I haven't had this type of setting before, and I don't think many of us have a retirement committee sit in the interim. So the process would be if y'all so chose to move forward with a study, correct? And then they would report back to your committee, the retirement committee, and then the retirement committee would make a decision based on the study, as well as then a bill could be amended like any other bill.
Well, how about if I have...
Or is that true?
Have legal counsel maybe address how much it could be amended. What number?
15.
15.
So we could substitute a bill today. The committee could substitute a bill today, and we could obtain a new certification from the state auditor, and then it could be sent for actuarial study. If it goes for actuarial study and is amended at all, it has to go to the state auditor for certification, whether or not that could impact the actuarial figures. And if it does, then it would have to be restudied.
Basically, if we made changes, they'd have to do a new study.
Right.
To reflect the changes. Thank you. That's why I asked the question, because I didn't
But if the changes were made before it ever went to the actuarial study, that would produce the sending it back.
So with that, I defer to the desire of the committee. I don't have the language, but we could add the Republic of North Korea. That would be a simple add. The rest of the language.
Okay, hang on just a minute before we go through that. Next in line was Representative Weldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author of the bill, can you just help me understand the practical application of this bill when how the retirement plans are going to monitor the input or the impact that North Korea, this list of countries, have on these companies that are being invested in by our retirement plans. That seems like a very difficult proposition to impose on them. I don't disagree with the substance of what I believe is trying to be
The easy answer
imposed.
to that is they're doing it today because it's current law in Georgia. Number one. And number two is there are 20 other states that are also doing the same thing, so we're not reinventing the wheel for them. The way this works is there are certain sectors, energy sector, telecommunications sector, petroleum sector, and there's a list of companies that operate in those sectors in these countries. That list is at the Securities Exchange Commission in Washington, D.C., and therefore it's been pretty straightforward to monitor that list, and that's why the states that have done it and the state of Georgia that has done it has been successful. And at the end of the day, you want to know the performance. The performance, I've got a bunch of pages of statistics, but the performance is it's outperformed those states that have done this program and invested in what's called Patriot funds have outperformed the rest of the market by 10% or more, year in and year out. So,
just briefly, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
So there's a list that's maintained by SEC, or I guess that's who it is, or the exchanges, and they follow that list. I guess my question then would be, it seems like this law would be kind of easy to get around. And what I mean, for example, let's say Sudan has this group that wants to create this country. They go to anywhere, England, they go somewhere in Europe that's not on the list. They create a company, they set it up, they run it. All the profits are still going to Sudan, which is on the list, but it's just a company that's has its origin in another place.
They do end runs, yes. I don't know if we have a solution in the state of Georgia to solve that, but the answer to your question is I'm sure that they have found a number of ways to do it, but moreover, sanctions have been shown to have a substantial impact, and the move to lift sanctions have been shown to be marked by celebrations in the streets, which means they've probably had an impact. So, but I don't have a solution to limiting the.
That's just one step we feel like we ought to do as a matter of policy. Okay.
And we've been doing it, and I would recommend that this committee continue the policy.
Okay, Representative Wilkerson, did you have a?
Yeah, I just had a question, I guess, or a comment. As you're giving the background information on pages, I guess starting on page 3, line 63, you talk about the Iran Sanctions Act and you give some background information. Even though that's no longer applicable, is that because it was revised with, if you go to page 4, line 103, the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Act, and you have both of them in there. Is it because you're trying to give a history? Because the first part doesn't even apply anymore.
It's the history.
And so I think it just is a little confusing as far as combining it.
It's the intent. It's just the whereas language in the background, but the intent was to show that this is not something new, that the United States government has been doing this and continue to renew sanctions in these state-sponsor of terrorism countries for a number of years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and then I believe Representative Buckner had a question.
Yes. I was here for the discussion about this the first time, and while I don't have any problems with the concept, we had concern back then, and now that you've written an awful lot of new language, and I can't seem to see, to follow up on Representative Weldon's comment, there could be an opportunity where our retirement system invested in a group-type investment. With all due diligence, they did not invest in any of these bad actors, countries, or players. But because of the change in the list of companies that are put on scrutiny, they could have a financial obligation to, say, a mutual fund for an extended period of time that they may be stuck with, that has just then hopped on to a list that is now under scrutiny. What kind of position does that put the retirement system? Are there going to be sanctions against the retirement system for being involved in something they found themselves caught in, if you will?
The answer is there's no sanctions. Number two is that's been worked through by this state and 19 other states previously. And there's a mechanism that starts on page 6, I believe it's where it begins, of how to begin the process of identifying. And so there's a lengthy process, and this is just frankly boilerplate language that's been used in a number of states successfully, so that Georgia's not the outlier. We do it the same way all these other states are doing it. And we went through that exercise about 5 years ago when we began doing this, and we have positively impacted the performance.
Out of complete respect for you and the process that you're trying to put in place again, I think things have changed, and you mentioned that in your testimony about these lists changing, and we might need to know a little bit from the retirement system about anything they might need before this goes forward to make it easier for them to meet the needs that are being
I would ask
here.
that the committee allow an assessment, analysis, study, whatever, I apologize for what it's called, to move forward, and to actuarial study, and once that happens, then that can be all part of this process. Once again, we're not reinventing the wheel, and it's there's one of the questions early on why we were not the first state to pass it was because of good questions to say, how do you implement this? But now we've seen 20 times how to do it successfully, and more states continue to look at it every day. And I think the administrative time, in my opinion, just as I sit here, far outweighs the risk to the retirees and to the solvency of the retirement system, as well as to the risk to, frankly, members of our military and the United States citizens as we put money directly into companies that are over here trying to take us out. So I think the risk burden analysis, in my opinion, outweighs some administrative hurdles.
Senator Hill, I know I had some other people ahead of the process. Did you still want to make a comment, or were you looking at motions?
Happy to make a motion.
Okay. Well, let me go back again then first to legal counsel and make sure I understand the process here. We could amend a motion here, but then if it were to change later on, that would have a fiscal impact, or explain the rules to me again.
Sure. So we have to pass it by substitute. If it passes by substitute and there's a change and it goes to the actuary, or if it passes as it is today and it goes to the actuary and the figure comes back, then it would go again to the state auditor for a new certification. The state auditor would determine whether or not it would change the actuarial impact. So it doesn't get automatically sent back. So, for example, in this instance, adding another country or taking a country away from the list or changing some form of procedure may not have any actuarial impact at all. Therefore, those substitutes would not give rise to a second actuarial study. So it is dependent on the type of change made.
But if the substitution was made today, if this was amended, then that would be before the first study, so there would only be one study.
Correct. We just get a new letter from the state auditor, which would take about a week, and then would send it on to the actuary.
Okay. Senator Hill.
I had a question following up on that. Could we amend the bill today and then also say today, as amended, we'd like to submit it for an actuarial?
Yes, we can do that. I would prepare a substitute based on the changes that y'all recommend today, and then it would pass committee as substituted. So
it can go through the process without us having to meet again is my goal.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Is that Representative Maxwell?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. I think I would like to hear from ERS or something. I think.
Well, that was going to be actually my next question. Was I don't know that they want to have an official position as a group, but we would like to have their comments if that was appropriate. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, as you all know, ERS and TRS are invested together in sort of a pooled approach via the Division of Investment Services, and so we defer to their expertise for these accounts, for these comments. I would also say that I understand this, the Senator's comments that there are many reasons to consider a bill like this. We are interested purely from a financial standpoint as fiduciaries of the fund, and making sure that from a purely financial standpoint, the fund has every opportunity to get the best performance it possibly can. So those other reasons I'm not commenting on at this time. I guess the first point that I would make is that the Division of Investment Services reading of the bill suggests that it would be an expansion over the current law. Current law restricts us from investing in Iran-related companies, primarily in the oil sector. This obviously has more than just Iran listed, and y'all are contemplating additional countries on top of that. In addition, this bill does seem to add businesses that are involved in power production and military equipment, in addition to just the oil sector per se. I guess my second comment would be just on a general basis to address the point of risk. The ideal circumstance for an investor is to have as broad an array of opportunities as possible. To restrict that in any way that is not specifically for investment-related reasons, therefore restricts the universe of consideration in which the investment team can look. And so essentially, to pass or to have legislation like this in effect takes away a potential opportunity. Whether that opportunity is good or bad, or risky or not risky, I would defer to the staff of the Division of Investment Services to make that determination, as they do every day with the decisions they have to make every day. And so from our standpoint, to allow that staff to continue their professional responsibilities in that area would be what we would consider to be optimal from a portfolio performance standpoint. Jeff, do you have anything to add?
First, I want to apologize for the phone a little while ago. I'm getting kind of old to have a smartphone, and want to apologize to the gentleman for the odd comment that came out, and want to apologize to all of y'all too. As Mr. Potvin just stated, this bill is a substantial expansion on the current bill. With all due respect to Senator Hill, the previous version, which was pointed out in some of the leading language, just referred to Iran. And it just referred to oil production type properties in Iran. As Mr. Maxwell pointed out, the majority of this bill is new language. It does expand into other areas that Jim mentioned, primarily power production and military equipment. And, just to give you just an idea, as this is worded today, very good companies like General Electric we would not be able to invest in. Volkswagen would be another known company that we would not be able to invest in. There's some awful good international companies in the oil industry that we have not been able to invest in because of the Iran potential ties through a subsidiary, conceivably of another subsidiary. That's in that company. And what that causes is like Jim said, it reduces the pool of, I'll just focus on energy companies that we can invest in. So we may not be able to invest in what would be a very profitable, low risk investment opportunity, and have to drop down to companies that may not be as profitable, could be just as profitable, but might have a little higher risk associated with it. So I would differ with the points about this would cause a less risky portfolio for the retirement systems. And again, as Jim said, our fiduciary responsibility is to invest the funds that the members have put into the system, that the states put into the system, and the local employers to maximize within certain risk restrictions the return to be able to pay the benefit and provide the lowest cost to the employers and the members as possible.
All right.
May
Thank
I
you.
reply?
Thank you for your comments, and you will close the debate in just a second. One more. I've got Senator Crane that had a question. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I hit that wrong?
That's
Yeah.
okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess listening to what we hear from our retirement systems, it's interesting that I guess what you suggest, there's no moral component when it comes to investment decisions. And I understand that from a mathematical perspective. But in reality, there is a moral component. If we were at war with China, would we sit here and send George's money and Georgians' money to companies in China when we were on a head-to-head war with them? And of course the answer would be no, we wouldn't do that. So it's a little more oblique when we have these other countries, and we tend to wink when major corporations do business with them. And I'd have to say that at some point we have to interject a moral component in any decision we make, even if it means a slightly lower return on investment, because eventually these moral decisions may or may not lead to who's victorious in some of these conflicts. And I think anything we can do to make incentivize companies to make those same moral judgments would be good for all of us. So just a comment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And Representative Benton, I believe you had a comment too.
Yes, I wanted to ask Mr. Ezell about, several years ago we passed legislation that would allow the retirement systems to invest more in foreign companies. The legislation that is being proposed now, would that have a significant effect on that? We did that because at that particular time, those foreign-based companies had a larger return than did our domestic companies. Would this particular piece of legislation have a significant effect on that issue?
What you're referring to, and I'll just do just a little quick history, if I may. Pretty good ways back, we had restrictions on percentages on how much we could do in international companies. And as international companies grew, we had asked to have that percent increased, in which, in y'all's wisdom, you allowed us to do that. And then it got to the point where it's hard to draw a line between a true domestic company and a true international company. It's more like a world economy. We had asked to have the percent just stricken altogether, in which y'all did, allow us to, to do that. International companies perform well at times. Pure domestic companies perform well at times. Again, it's like Jim said, to have the ability to invest in the entire universe and to pick the investments, to follow the strategies that our investment folks feel are appropriate. We just don't need to have these type of limitations in structuring our investment portfolios.
All right. Thank you. Okay. At this point, I believe we'll have Senator Hill close the debate, and then the floor will be open at that time for motions or amended motions.
Thank you, Chairman. Tariff-free investing does work. This does work. The first state in the country that actually imposed tariff, what they called themselves tariff-free pension portfolio restrictions, was the state of Missouri, and it's called the Missouri Investment Trust. It is completely tariff-free, has a completely tariff-free international portfolio that excludes shares in every single company, not just the oil sector, not just power generation, not just military. I would suggest that we made a mistake when we did not include military and power generation, and I'd actually add telecommunications to that list, but when we just did oil. But in Missouri, they restrict every single type of company doing business in not just Iran, but also North Korea and Syria. And they've been doing this for 6 years, I believe. been doing this for quite a long time. In the process of making that decision in Missouri to go tariff-free, the trust ran a hypothetical. And the historic performance analysis of this portfolio found that if they had been investing for the prior 5 years, that the portfolio would have been better, not worse off. And today it is still better now versus being worse off. The Missouri portfolio is much more restrictive than Senate Bill 246 and is much more restrictive than the bill that was passed in Georgia a number of years ago. And once again, their portfolio was better, performed better because of these restrictions, complete restrictions, not just limited in little sectors and not just this and not just that, not just saying, okay, you can't do whatever, General Electric, but they were a lot more restricted. In addition, there's more evidence that tariff-free investing does not impede investment performance. I've got graphs here. I didn't want to bore you with all the, in another life, another world, I've got a Series 7 license. Why'd I get in? So. But I've looked at this and I've studied it. And I'd like to also remind the committee, back in the early 1980s, there was something going on that was terrible in South Africa called apartheid. And the United States government and numerous states across America chose to restrict investments in South African companies that were investing in South Africa of all sorts. They found a way to actually have these the Georgia portfolio and other portfolios to succeed with the restrictions in South Africa because they thought it was important. It was important for a number of reasons. Then it was important for moral reasons. Moreover, then the security issues were not so prevalent, from what I recall, of South Africa as it relates to the United States. But it was important to the performance of those funds. I believe today the security issues and the moral issues and the other issues related to these, either any of these countries that you've heard, are critical. We made that judgment call a few years ago. Missouri and 19 other states, maybe 20 if my number's accurate, have chosen to do the same thing. The investment advisors are great. They do tremendous work. They're here to provide advice. It's our determination to provide the public policy decisions for that, and I defer to the United States government and their decisions and discussions, and as well as performance in other states that have gone before us.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you. And the debate has been closed, so I won't be able to allow any other questions. With that, Chair will entertain a motion. All right. I think that's what we heard from legal counsel, was that you could amend it. It would only require one actuarial study, but it would require an additional note from the state auditor.
I move do pass as amended if this amendment wins, but I need help from legislative counsel on the wording. But if prescribed country means, you know, any country that's on United States, either Security Exchange Commission or Department of Homeland Security, or some means of that they're a sponsor of state terrorism. So I would need some help on drafting that, but that would be the point, is we would get rid of naming countries.
The only challenge with that is we would want to avoid a delegation issue, so it would need to be as the list stands on a date certain. So that Homeland Security date as it stood on January 1st, 2015, because we wouldn't want to delegate to the federal government the ability to change our state law with regards to our investments. So it'd have to be kind of a snapshot if we did it that way.
So what would be your recommendation on the wording of that?
Yeah.
I believe that's why Mr. Bundrick used the individual names. Otherwise, I would use the phrase any country that's listed on the Department of Homeland Security's list of state-sponsored terrorists as it existed on January 1st, 2015, or something that's happened in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and I would want it to be reviewed and updated.
We could.
We would have to do that?
May I give you some background?
Sure. Yeah.
If I'd refer the committee or legislative council to, I believe it starts around page 8, the bottom line 275 or so and following. And other states have done it this way. As the United States Congress, executive order, etc., takes action related to those countries, for example, directed to line 283, the United States revokes all sanctions imposed against the government of a prescribed country.
Okay.
They would be taken off that list. Basically, it self-repeals certain provisions, certain country based on that. Other states have done it that way and followed. This is more of a self-repealing measure, unless the council reads it as adding to the list as well as subtracting from. But that was the discussion with legislative council when we drafted and what's being done in other states.
So that any change would, if it were removed, it would take place, but if it was added, it would not take place.
That's my understanding. If that's helpful.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Representative Weldon, I think maybe had a suggestion. We'll see.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could pose a question to Legislative Council. Isn't it true that if a federal statute or executive order is issued with respect to investment of American funds or originating from America, is precluded from investing in certain countries or certain companies that have a country of origin that are deemed to be a terroristic threat or entity, then that would preempt state law, and accordingly our investment would be precluded from investing in those entities.
That's an extremely good point. I didn't consider that. Yes, it's likely that the federal government could preempt a state on that kind of decision, but I'd have to look it up just to be certain. But what you're saying seems to make sense.
But preemption doctrine would apply in that situation, correct?
I believe so.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think that would give us, with respect to the amendment, that would provide protection that I think you're looking for when those countries are put on the list. If they're delisted, then it gives a flexibility in the law. And it's one of those few times when federal and state law actually work well together. But it might assist in the preparation of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to be made?
Well, I mean, I'm interested in helping move the bill to an actuarial study so long as we have this constant process of looking into the countries.
Okay.
That's all I was trying to accomplish. I don't want to waste people's time, though.
Okay, so are you looking at amendment with the wording we had down here?
Yes.
Okay. You want to state that again?
All right. So prescribed country means any country listed on, and I don't know if we decided whether it was SEC Commission or Department of Homeland Security. I don't know where that would be listed. But any country that's listed as a state sponsor of terrorism in the Federal Digest, whatever it may be.
Federal laws or regulations.
Federal laws and regulations. Okay, the CFR. Okay. So a prescribed country means any nation listed in the federal laws and regulations as a state sponsor of terrorism.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so with that amendment, I'd move do pass.
Okay, we've got a motion, and we have is that a second?
This may be important, Mr. Chairman. The current list on state.gov is the 4 states listed. North Korea is not listed as a sponsor for whatever reason. Is not listed as a sponsor of terrorism.
Okay.
Far be it for me to understand that.
So Some background is we wanted to improve trade relations there a few years ago, and I think they took it off. It's gone back and forth.
Yeah, but the current list I see on state.
That's accurate.
All right, we've got a motion
Second.
to go by their list. We've got a second from Senator Crane. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your hands. Okay, I believe it has passed unanimously.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate the time. I think this is important as any other thing we're doing here, and hope you all continue to have a good summer. Thank you,
All right,
Chairman.
thank you, Senator. With that, I think it's probably best if I just swap seats with Chairman Battles and let him have this. I don't want to be responsible here. Just slide that over.
All right. Thank you, and I appreciate you being here. And I think this gave us an opportunity to hear the Senate bills as they will come back from their study, and we'll be much more informed when it reaches the House committee to make a decision. We're going to follow somewhat of a change in what I was hoping that would happen today. When I began looking around the room, I was very concerned about the fact that all the authors, except for Chairman Weldon, is absent from the room. And I said, you know, that might have been a problem with the notification. So I called, and sure enough, notifications failed to go out. But we're not having another meeting. What we're going to do, and I have polled the committee, and we're going to take, I'm going to take Chairman's privilege to do this. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through these bills. And when, before I do that, we're going to ask, are there any, is there anyone here today to speak to these House bills that is being presented? That's House Bill 421, 508, 550, 551, 605, 635, 687, 690. Is anyone here? I do know that I think Judge Green is here to speak to Bubba Epps, Representative Epps' bill, and we can have testimony to that. Also, we have our fine secretary, and what we're going to do is we're going to begin with Chairman Weldon, and to hear his bill first, and then we'll go from there. So, House Bill 605.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This is a bill that will provide that those members of the judicial retirement system will be able to get credit for the part-time service that they've got. And I had it here just a second ago. But we do have one slight modification with, okay, this is substitute. And we have a substitute, and I can identify on line 12, begins with the word full-time position shall not. The word not was a typographical error that was left in the bill, and we're going to delete that. And that's the only change that I'm aware of in the substitute that council just gave me. So that, and I believe that the folks with the retirement system are in agreement. It was just an omission that occurred, or just a typographical error that occurred. And so we're going to delete the word not, and I ask for favorable consideration. This just gives whether a ratio will be computed by the highest average monthly compensation for 24 months. So for the person who's getting credit for their part-time service.
All right. Thank you. Chairman, you have a motion or?
I'll second. I'll move it, and he can second, whichever.
Okay, motion and second. All right, do have a question. All right, and your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Weldon, does this bill have any impact on the magistrate judges or just probate simply?
This is just, anyone that's in the judicial retirement system, this will have an impact on it. It just says that anybody who's had temporary, or not temporary, part-time service, they can have, they can get credit for a pro rata share of their part-time service. It just gives them the flexibility to do that. That's it.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you have a motion and second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, like sign. Motion is carried. Thank you. We're going to go on with House Bill 635, and we're happy to have with us Judge Mike Green. This is Representative Epps, and this has to do with the probate court retirement fund. Hitchens.
To speak to House Bill 635. This bill simply, at the present time, the members of our probate judge retirement fund can get up to 20 years of creditable service. This bill would allow those that serve more than 20 to get up to a total of 30 years of creditable service. Also, under Section 2, it allows those that are currently serving that have over 20 years will have an opportunity next year to buy back those whatever time they have above 20 at the rate it would cost, whatever that would cost they should have paid in, plus 7% interest, which is our actual assumption of rate of return. Appreciate your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Judge Green. Does you have any questions of our committee? Do we have no? All right, Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if they have more than 20 years of service and they want to buy back in, we're not going to, and they want to buy that time in, we're not going to make them pay the full actuarial amount.
Well, I mean, if they were able to pay along, I mean, the fund would have had some cost in that. But we are asking that members would pay what they should have paid plus the 7% interest, which is what we assume is our actual assumption of our rate of return. But it would not. So if that answers your question,
would that carry it on, not for just those years, but would it carry it on out for? Don't we look at 20 years out on that for a full actuarial value?
I'm sure the study would look at that. Yes, sir.
Is that part? Is that in the bill that would be a full actuarial? That they would pay the full actuarial?
No,
value?
so the bill is that they would pay in what they should have paid in, that they missed paying, plus 7% interest for the period of time that they did not pay it.
Well, then aren't they getting more value than what they would be getting more value than what they put in, correct?
We don't think so. We're not requiring them to pay in what they should have paid in. We're charging them 7% interest to pay that. I don't know that I understand your question completely, but that is what the bill does. They would pay in what they should have paid in. If they want to buy back any, they don't have to. But if they want to, they would pay in what they should have paid in plus 7% interest.
Well, the reason I'm asking the question is because every group that's come before us that has wanted to be able to buy time, they've had to pay the full actuarial value of that time that they're looking to buy back. I think I'm correct on that. Somebody's been on the committee for as long as I have. Has that not been what we
buy from other school systems and stuff we've done in the past? You know, other employees.
Chairman Maxwell, was that not your understanding of that as well?
We started that several years ago when I was chairman, made sure that they were paying full actuarial costs.
Okay. Is this going to be full actuarial value if they buy in time?
the way the bill is drawn, it would be what they should have paid in plus 7% interest, which is our actuarial assumption. Whether that would be the full actuarial cost of it, I don't know until they do the study.
Yeah.
But the bill does not, that's what it specifies under Section 2, that if anybody did want to buy back, is what it would cost them to buy it.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one other question?
Certainly.
To the Legislative Council, what would we have to change in the bill to require full actuarial costs for them to buy in?
There's kind of standard phrase that we can add that requires them to do full actuarial value. If you give me a moment, I can find where exactly we should.
Mr. Chairman, if could give him go to somebody else, I'd like to hear what we might can change on that, since we've required everybody else to do that.
Certainly, I think, Coach, you next one up.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge, one question here. When they buy back the 7% interest, that money goes back into the general fund?
Into the
state fund?
No, sir, it goes into this probate judge's retirement fund.
Oh, it goes back in there?
Yes, sir.
And how many people are we talking about?
That could possibly buy back. Of course, it's opened up for people
Everybody.
that don't have 20 years now.
Right.
If somebody's got one, or somebody's elected next year, would be able to continue to get credit past 20 years where we're capped out now. I don't know, Bob Carter, do you know the amount that's possible?
17.
It's possibly 17 that have over 20 years now. And that could be from, they could have 21, some people could have 35, but they would be able to buy up to 10 additional years. Good. If they have served that long.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
I'm trying to take these in order, and I believe, Chairman Coleman, I believe you got yours answered. Chairman Maxwell?
Coach asked part of my question. I was wondering how many people might be eligible. But now, if these people that's already worked 20 years, have any of those already retired and are
No,
looking at buying back time? They're still probate judges.
It would be those that are actively serving.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're okay, man. I guess this is going to be good for the fund to put in longer, let them put in longer.
Well, I mean, it seems to be the trend that folks are having to work longer. They're not able to retire at 20, and in this particular fund, which I believe is probably one of the few in Georgia, that you're capped out with 20 years of creditable service.
Yeah, I don't know anybody that's already retiring after 20 years.
Well, that's what we're finding.
Okay.
And there's no creditable service for us to continue serving. I mean, you don't get any credit towards your retirement after that 20 years.
Somebody else said they might as well go sell insurance after that.
I thought insurance agents were the ones that could retire after 20.
Okay, we have a number of questions. Representative Butler.
I was curious to know about the fund. I want to know how many people were impacted. Of course, we hear it's about 17, but the way I understand this, these are people that had other jobs within the system that retirement may or may not have been available to them. They are going to pay in, but we don't know if it's a full actuarial cost, but the fund can handle it. Is that correct? I wanted to hear from if all 17 say we want to do this and it opens it up to the world, is this something we can live with? And still be able to pay the people that have paid the full amount for the full number of years and want to have their retirement check.
We think that's true, but the 17, we're really opening this up for everybody that's a member of the fund that could continue. Those that may have 20 years next year, they can continue to contribute and get credit up to 30. The 17 are just those that are above 20 now that would have an opportunity, if they wanted to buy back any of those years that they have creditable service for.
I got you. Okay.
Yes, but to answer your question, we do think the fund can fund it.
Okay. So ultimately, it would enrich the fund rather than take something from it.
Sure. Yes. This is Bob Carter, our Secretary Treasurer of our fund.
This is a little different than a normal buyback. They're not actually buying back service from prior years that they were outside the probate judges fund. This is judges that were in the fund setting, and because they met their 20 years, then they were, by state law, were not able to accrue additional benefits. This just gives them the opportunity to go back and buy that 20 years plus 5 years if they had it, or 10 years if they had it, up to 30 years. But it's not people buying back service that was outside of another credible fund. And there's no state money into this. It's strictly into the probate judge's retirement fund to fund it. And that's what the actuarial study would do, would let us know. But we're seeing, just like Judge Green said, people are not being able to retire at 20 years anymore. And this 20-year cap was put in this fund back in 1968. So we've got judges that stay in far beyond 20 years, and Social Security won't even let us retire in 20 years anymore.
May I ask one more question, please? Would it be simpler just to take the cap off?
We want to take the cap off just for 30 years. And I think that'll count on most of our people, most of our judges, that they're not going to sit on the bench beyond 30 years. But they are sitting there beyond 20.
Okay, we had a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple points. You talk about the fund. Is it fully funded only by these dues, contributions, and investment growth, or is there an employer component?
There's a court contribution from the probate court.
Okay, so that's what's missing actuarially that we're looking at. So some obligation is going to be have to be met either through growth or through somebody else's contribution to make up the actuarial obligation. The second question or point might be of interest is, can people who've already retired do this also?
It is only available to active judges that are sitting that have beyond 20 years of service, no retired members.
Okay. Thank you.
And if the fund can't afford it without increasing any fees, then the bill would not go forward.
Okay. Answered mine? Okay, I can take some of you off. All right. Chairman Coleman.
I think the question is not that so we understand the ones that are sitting, we're taking the cap off, they're going to be fine. The only concern we have is I'm with Tom. We just want to be sure, like in every retirement system we do, that the actual cost, what it's going to cost, is being paid by the 17. I mean, that solves it. We know what you're doing. We know the ones that are paying are going to keep paying. But we just want to be sure that those coming in aren't coming in at the cost. They're going to pay the actual cost. That's it. And that's why we want to be sure it's done.
I think Chairman Green would probably be acceptable, and I'm sure the author of the bill would be acceptable if we changed the 7% to the actuarial cost.
7% won't do it. If it's 20%, we won't. 20%.
Yeah, so whatever the actuarial cost is, change that from 7%.
That's what we're at.
All right. Do you have any other questions? All right. Any other comments? Thank you. I have a motion. Well, that's good. You had a motion. You had a second? Second. Motion and second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Oh, just a moment. I'm sorry. I got a little.
Got my amendment I want to put on that.
Okay.
Because there was never a motion. There was never an amendment offered as such.
Okay. Well, we did not vote, so we can end that amendment.
I have it ready.
Okay.
The amendment that I had was for full actuarial costs, and so if legislative council could read that for us now.
On line 25, strike the member contribution he or she would have, continue on the line 26, paid during such period, comma, together with 7%, and inserting in its place, to the board an amount determined by the board to be sufficient to cover the full actuarial cost of granting the creditable service as provided in this code section. And then inserting on line 26, after the word application, the phrase and payment. So that's supposed to read, such application and payment must be received not later than December 31st, 2016.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to put that in the form of a motion, please.
All right. We have a motion. Have a motion and a second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. The opposition, like sign. All right. Then we'll vote on the amendment. I'm sorry, the bill as amended. Have a motion. Motion second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right. Thank you so very much. We're going to go on. We've got a couple of people to speak to. House Bill 590 and 91. You've got to go retrieve them quickly. This is Peace Officers Annuity. I'd like to speak to House Bill 590.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bob Carter. I'm Secretary Treasurer of the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund. To speak to the bill is Sheriff Roger Garrison, Cherokee County, and Chairman of the Board. And I'll present part of the issues, then he'll answer some of your questions. The issues we're having with the Peace Officers Annuity and Benefit Fund, which is a supplemental retirement fund for law enforcement officers of all levels in the state of Georgia, cities, counties, and state law enforcement officers that are working in a sworn position. Currently, we are not meeting minimum funding standards as set by state law for a retirement fund. Funding, we're okay right now under the long picture, but we can see a trend that's going to cost this fund more money than we can afford. So what we're asking for is a possibility of extending our income from strictly fines and forfeitures, where it is now, to the insurance companies. And now we've talked with them, and we know it's going to be a hard battle to fight, but we feel like it's necessary. We're asking for only on automobile vehicles insurance coverage, 0.25% of the annual premium, which would be passed on to the consumer. If you had a $600 a year insurance premium on your automobile, 0.25% would mean $1.50 a year increase to your premium. To the Peace Officers Fund, because in 2013 was the latest numbers I was able to get, there's $1.5 billion worth of automobile insurance premiums in the state of Georgia in 2013. It would mean $16 million of revenue that we would collect from the insurance companies, not from the state of Georgia. What we're having now is the cities and counties and the state, as you know, have cut back on retirement benefits. So this is causing the officers out there that are already eligible to be a member of the fund to join this fund by leaps and bounds. Right now, in 2013, we had an increase of 752 new members. 2014, 950 new members. And this year so far, 2015, has been 362 new members. We're on track for being over 1,000 members because in the month of May last week, Newton County brought in 150 applications of all the deputy sheriffs in Newton County. What we're finding is the cities and counties understand the need to recruit and retain qualified law enforcement officers, so they're beginning to pay the member contributions from the cities and counties to the retirement fund. So we have got to come up with a way to provide additional monies to provide for these long-term benefits over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And that's what we're looking at through our actuarial studies that we have already done. It says we can sustain the membership that we have now, but if we have this continued membership growth, the way it's growing now, 7, 8, 10% a year, that we won't be able to do it for 30 or 40 years. So the board is being proactive instead of reactive and looking at many years down the road. We think that this is a valuable benefit to the law enforcement officers and to the cities out there. And going to the insurance world for participation is that all of the traffic accidents that are worked out there by law enforcement benefit the insurance companies in the reports, either positive, negative, depending on whether you're the plaintiff or the defendant in an insurance case with a traffic accident. So Sheriff Garrison, you got some comments?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. I'll speak to just some of the basics of it. This is the primary retirement fund that we have for peace officers in the state of Georgia. I'm fortunate from Cherokee County. There is a county retirement in place there, but in many places throughout the state there is not anything for our peace officers. And even at the end of the day, with what we are offering, a maximum benefit after 30 years of services is only $731 a month, which is actually very small. We as a board have tried to police ourselves in moving our vesting periods from 10 to 15 years. I think we did that a few years ago, and then not so many years ago we went back and doubled from $10 to $20 our employee or officer contribution. That's been in place 10 or 12 years now. We're trying to police ourselves and keep the fund viable, but it's attractive because it's the only one out there. Our membership is growing. We haven't offered any increase in benefits, I think, since 2006 or 2007. And again, in a day when we're asking more and more and more of our police officers, and we're fortunate here that we haven't experienced things we have throughout the rest of the country, again, we think it's the least we can do to try to compensate them after 20, 25, and 30 years of service.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have some other members of the law enforcement community that will speak just 1 second on it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Jamie Steinberg with the Fraternal Order of Police, Georgia State Lodge, and representing the 4,000 plus members of the FOP in the state of Georgia. I just stand in support of House Bill 591, and just one thing that I would just like to add, that this is the only portable retirement in the state of Georgia currently. If you were employed by a local city or county, if you go to the state, you can take that with you, and vice versa if you go back to the city or county. It's a leg on the retirement chair. Some people have the benefits of investing in 401ks or another pension, a Roth IRA or something to that effect. But for many people in many departments and many peace officers in this state, this is the only thing they have. So we sure would ask your consideration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm Keith Glass. I'm Chief of Police and Public Safety Director in the City of Monroe. I'm past president of the Peace Officers Association of Georgia. I'm the current president of the Georgia Chiefs Association. And I'm an old retired command sergeant major. I'm very respectful of my state representative, who is Bruce Williamson. He does us a great job. My state senator is Bill Calzert, and we're proud of him also. I'm just here to tell you that as the president of the Chiefs Association, we're in support of looking at this and trying to make it better for those that do things and are put in a situation every day that most of us don't want to be in. So thank you for your willingness to look at it, and we certainly appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
This is the last one.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll be real brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Jeff Weaver, Georgia Department of Natural Resources, just here to echo what these gentlemen have already brought forward and lend the state support from the state officers for this bill. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And as you know, this is coming from one of those former had something to do with the state patrol, the colonel. I have some 16. Patty, is that you? Yeah. Okay. You have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to be really clear. This Bill 591 is asking to have a study,
Right.
just a study
Just
for
a
right
study.
now.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I can understand that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot one major point.
Yes, sir.
This is probably the only piece of legislation that you'll get the sheriffs and the chiefs both to agree upon.
Yes, sir.
We've done better this year, Rod.
Chairman Weldon.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I don't think we're finished with this bill yet, so we still may have some opportunity for disagreement. This bill strikes me very similar to a bill that we saw last year, where we had there had been asserted that there was a problem with financing of moving from paper citations that were issued to electronic citations being issued, and this was carried and on the floor, and I believe that the House of Representatives found it to be a tacking on bill.
Somebody brought that up.
And what I don't. Somebody did.
Yeah.
My concern is we're placing a burden on insurance policies, but I'm not sure that I see I don't understand the relationship that is the connection between the funding mechanism and the retirement. I don't see the connection. If you could just help me understand that.
We think the connection is that all the wrecks that have happened out there are worked by law enforcement officers at city, county, or state level. And doing that, they have to take their time off generally to go back to court and testify for an insurance company or against an insurance company, depending on which side the plaintiff is on. So these officers are taking time away from regular normal patrol duties to work on behalf of insurance companies. That's the connection between the funding of the fund, which is made up of members of law enforcement.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Well, there's a provision in Title 24 regarding payment of witness fees and mileage that a law enforcement officer is entitled to if he has to go and testify in a civil action. And I know I pay them when I have an officer come and testify in one of my cases. And so what that's doing is so what we're doing is we're giving them those fees and requiring those people who have those that have been involved in the automobile crash, whether they were the victim or the tortfeasor, pay that. In addition to, we're going to increase their insurance premium as a result, so they to contribute to the retirement program.
Well, it would have absolutely nothing to do with an individual case. It would just be insurance policies that are written in the state of Georgia. This is precedence by the Firefighters Pension Fund that does the same thing with property and casualty insurance. So that's where we got the idea from, because right now all of our money for funding comes from fines and forfeitures. And as you well know, fines and forfeitures has got about 17 add-ons to it now, so we couldn't afford any more, the criminals to pay any more part of it. So we thought the vehicle owners could pay part of the retirement benefits. Thank you.
Well,
Representative Weldon.
If I may, Mr. Chairman. The bill last year didn't seem to be connected to me, it didn't seem to be connected. This bill seems to be more connected to the citations that are issued, and this would be more appropriate for that type of thing. It just seems to me, and it may be a more direct connection with the risk, and I don't deny that every officer who works a wreck is at risk because they're out there on a roadway and they're not in a vehicle or not with safety equipment around them. I'm not against the what you're doing. I just don't see I'm not sure that I agree with the connection between automobile insurance policies and a tax being put on them to support this.
Okay, so I understand your position.
All right, thank you. All right. Chairman Massey, did you?
Yeah, I see on page line 14, I believe, Bob, y'all are raising the dues to $30 a month. Is that correct in this bill?
Yes, sir. And
I know we moved it, a few years ago from 15 up to 20 or something like that. And if you got, about 25,000 people, that'll bring you about $750,000 a year, I think. And Representative Weldon's point, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, we've already got premium taxes that we're paying, or the insurance companies are paying on P&C. I think they pay about 2.5% for the cities and counties that come out already. And then 2.25%, I believe, goes to the state, if I'm not mistaken. Now, have y'all ever talked to any of the cities or counties about getting a little part of that for y'all's? And I know that's going to be like pulling teeth out of an alligator.
No, sir. We have not explored that for that obvious reason that everybody unfortunately is fighting for everything that they can get. And if I can venture just a touch off of the correlation with the insurance and possibly the peace officers is the collection and the issuing of citations and the creation, if you will, of the criminal histories that these insurance companies use to set the rates for these drivers and so on and so forth. So I think we are in that system, in that food chain somewhere. But again, the cities, we have not approached them.
Well, I know there's already a pretty heavy tax already, and I know the property side, the firefighters do get a small, I can't remember what it is, maybe it's 0.25 or something for their fund out of the homeowner's tax, and that's been set years and years and years ago. Yeah, I have a little concern about it myself. Thank you, sir.
The board looks like the hero unit came up on us. A lot of lights flashing. Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 14, where you raised your dues from $20 to $30 a month, have y'all looked at what contribution would have to be from each individual so that there's not a taking from insurance companies, that there's just a taking from the potential retiree, what that would cost?
Every retirement system I know of has a funding mechanism other than just member contributions. So if we were going to do just member contributions, they could go out and do a 401 IRA or their own or whatever. So it does take member contributions and employer contributions per se.
Okay.
In this case, it's just court fees.
Okay.
But we have not looked at what the funding mechanism. If we go forward, you're kind enough to go forward with this, we can take a look at that as well. But we know that the $30 a month will not fund the retirement benefit of $732 at the end of 30 years. It also takes court fees. Last year, the members themselves contributed around $3 million. We got $15 million from the courts, which is down from where we have been because state court judges specifically have started giving community service time instead of fees back in the Great Depression, the recession we went through, because they were not finding people that are already in bankruptcy and lost their jobs. So our revenues have gone down considerably from the courts. But so it would not fund it at $30. No, sir.
But this is not meant to be a full retirement, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So this would be just a part-time retirement on top of whatever else they've got from a local jurisdiction or the state, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But what we have found in a lot of the cities and small counties out there, there is not a retirement system in their cities and counties. This is their retirement.
Okay, thank you. Coach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't want to do a tack on, but anyway, I just had one question. Now, the 10 years, that's the sunset. That's the sunset, right?
The vesting was 10 years up until 2010. The vesting changed to 15 years. Anybody joins on or after that date.
What if you had a member that had a hardship and he or she wanted to continue to pay into it to help another fellow member out? Do you have somewhere in this bill, or do we need to create one?
That they could continue to pay while they're not working in law enforcement, or could pay somebody else's dues for them.
Dues for them, right?
Yeah, anybody can do that.
Okay.
And we have several occasions where parents and grandparents are paying the dues for their young law enforcement officers. They don't make enough money to pay the $20 now.
Good.
Yeah, we can do that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. One last question. Ms. Patty?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've stated earlier that I represent very small communities, and I'm just curious to know if anyone can provide me with data of how many peace officers are in my area of the state, because I'm just curious to know how many is going to be affected by this.
We have a record of every city and every county in the state of Georgia, and I can get it back to you. I don't know off the top of my head. That's part of the GASB world now. We're going to be sending out notices to all the agencies of how many officers you have in the POAB. That'll be going in the next 6 to 8 months. But yes, I can identify them for you.
So basically, I want to make sure I'm clear on what's the ask today. We are going to be either voting yes or no, Mr. Chairman, to create a study committee.
That's right.
Actuarial.
To send this forward for actuarial study to see if it's feasible or not.
To see if it's feasible or not. Okay. To increase insurance rates to go toward peace officers' retirement. Am I saying that correctly?
That is the way that would be studied.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank
you. Chairman Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we move this one forward for an actuarial study.
I have a motion second. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, like sign. Motion is carried. We're on to House Bill 590, is also by Colonel Hitchens. I believe this is a little simple bill. Have someone, I believe, that wants to speak to that.
We do. This would affect POAB in that right now certified jailers are not eligible just because the law doesn't allow them to be a member. And we have had this bill before us a number of times, and it goes before the actuarial study, and we'll come back and see if we can afford to do it or not. Right now, corrections officers are eligible to be a member of the fund, and so county corrections officers say they should be eligible if state corrections officers are eligible. So we would like this bill to go forward to see what it would cost to fund these jailers that are certified jailers and not certified law enforcement officers. I recommend that you pass this along for study.
All right, have any questions? I believe. Is you?
Yeah, it's me.
It's you?
It's me. Now, yeah, Bob, we've looked at this thing several times. How many jailers do you think we'd be looking at out here putting into your fund?
They're about 3,500.
3,500 more. And every time we've studied it, it's not been feasible to put them in there because the dues, as you said before, would not
support it.
Not support it.
Yeah.
And they don't have any way, they can't go out here and write tickets or do anything else that's going to bring in any additional funding for the system other than their dues.
I would like to think our officers don't use the retirement fund as an incentive to write tickets and stuff.
Well, I know that. I understand
right.
that. But, yeah, there's no other way of funding it other than their dues.
Yeah. The Sheriff's Association has been very strong in this. As you know, Representative Houston has introduced this 3 or 4 different times.
We've looked at it 3 or 4 different times.
So if we can't just look at it one more time, we'll put this thing to rest forever.
No, that wouldn't happen. I've never seen anything be put to rest around here. As long as there's somebody else coming in, there's going to be another. There's going to be looked at again. I just don't understand. I mean, I know we've looked at it 3 or 4 times since I've been on the committee, it seems like, and never able to do it. Thank you.
Is that a recommendation, Mr. Chairman?
And a second.
All right.
Motion. I'm not gonna make a motion on it.
No, you're up for
I'm with the chairman over there.
No, you're up.
Okay, you got me a question.
For questions.
If I could pose a question to Chairman Maxwell, I believe I've seen this go through a few times too.
Yeah.
And it seems like the cost was would not allow us to move forward with the bill. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean.
That's what I remember out of it.
Okay. All right. I got a motion there. I move with table.
All right. We have a motion to table House Bill 590. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. It's tabled. All right. Okay. We have
Y'all in jail. I hope you get food.
Okay. All right. We can order in. Okay. Our fine secretary is going to caption anyone that'd like to speak to any of these. We're going to take House Bill 421 first. And this was Representative Nimmer.
We have a list.
Right here.
Okay.
The list.
This is a fairly simple bill.
Do I have a motion? Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. We got a couple of questions. I'm going to hear Chairman Benton.
No, my question was for the last bill.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When the motion to table was made, then my question became mute.
All right, sir. Okay, Representative Maxwell.
I believe all we're doing on this one is just changing the name for the retirement committee, for the name change that's made on the Department of Community Supervision, if I'm not mistaken. We're just asking to change the name in the retirement fund so we match what the actual name of that is now.
And I kind of had a question why this was even a.
Well, I think we have to do that.
Well, it requires it.
They require to make sure that the retirement system.
Well, it shouldn't cost us very much to do this. So do I have a motion?
I move to pass it.
All right, we have a motion second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Any opposition, like sign. It's carried. House Bill 508, Appeal Court Judge, Age Availability and Certain Benefits. Have anyone that would like to speak to that? In 508. What, you have the, this is Barry Fleming's. You scared of this one? You want to table it?
That's it.
That's going to have an impact, I can tell you.
That's magistrate court judges,
But that
not
might,
appellate court judges.
It was just lower the age when they get.
Yeah.
It was talking about raising teachers' age.
All right, we have, Coach, you have a question.
Not a question, but I just wanted to be known that, and that I wanted to sign these on the bill.
Yes, sir.
So,
I guess that'd be a reason to ask you your opinion.
my opinion is to move the bill forward. At the proper time, I'd like to make a motion for that.
Okay, we have Chairman Maxwell. Did you have a question?
No, that was off there.
That was it?
Yeah, right.
Did you have a question?
But I'll say it, yes.
You have, okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor of it passing? Let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, it's moved on. I was hoping that we was going to teach the Senate something, but Chuck, I don't believe we have.
They all left.
But we go now to House Bill 687, Employee Retirement System Member Eligibility to Transfer Funds to Georgia Judicial Retirement System. Do we have anyone to speak for or against that? House Bill 687, and that's Representative Trey Kelly. And it seems to be a fairly simple Does this affect in any way? All right, we have a motion to move this on. Do we have a second? We have a motion and a second. All in favor of moving this? House Bill 687, let me know by saying aye. Any opposition? It is passed on. All right, House Bill 690, this is Representative Amy Carter. And this is Employees Retirement System Georgia providing certain law enforcement officers to obtain credible service and system under certain conditions. Anyone want to speak to this? Have you looked at this, Mr. Secretary? This is House Bill 690, and the certification. Has anyone looked at the certification for this? This I'm sorry? We don't know. Effect? I don't think. Coach, do you have a question? Or did I just leave you?
You let me.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is there an actuarial cost? Yes. Could you do that? Comment on that? Do you have an opinion one way or the other?
Yeah, again,
Well, I'll tell you this. This is the last bill we're going to handle today, so if that tells you anything.
as I understand it, this would allow for the purchase of service for certain GBI officers. I'm probably getting that terminology wrong.
No.
One thing I will point out is it does appear to call for full actuarial costs to be paid for the purchase of service. I know that's probably going to be a question of yours. It does look like full actuarial costs would have to be paid.
Yeah, the Georgia Bureau of Investigations.
Yeah. But I'm not bringing this bill, so I don't have any
We understand. We're just
opinion on it.
asking, give us some clarification. Do you have any questions? All right, we have a motion to move this. Do we have a second? All in favor, let me know by saying aye. We need more than one. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Thank you. All opposed, like sign. Motion's carried. Thank you for being here today. We will not have another meeting this month. Unless you just want to come up here and sit in 506, because 606 doesn't have... Okay.
You got me though.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. For all the committee members, there's lunch out there for you.